What are some of your most common routines? You know, the things that you do that you don't even really think about. You just do them time after time. You've done them so much that you can be thinking about what you're eating tomorrow while you're doing it. It's kind of a muscle memory thing. Have you ever tried to change one of those? I'm serious. Have you ever tried to do something that you normally do one way and do it different? I did that one time. I think I read something about it, and I tried to brush my teeth with my opposite hand. I'm right-handed. I use my right hand to brush my teeth. I tried it with my left hand, and I'm serious. It was surprisingly hard. You had to really think about it. You had to do all this stuff. I'm like, I never knew brushing my teeth was so hard with the opposite hand. So I want to challenge you, try something different. Try it with an opposite hand or do it in a way that's just different from the way you do it. And you'll find yourself having to actually think about it because it's just something you normally do and you don't even think about. There are a lot of good things that can happen when we have a good routine. There just are. Productivity can increase. We can compete at higher levels. It's always good to have great routines in your life, and everybody should. However, there are some dangers of routines that we as men need to look at in our life. If we're not careful, our routines can end up hurting us in different ways. So on today's show, we're going to talk about some of those dangers that are inherent in routines and what to look out for. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the Confident Man Podcast, empowering men with the confidence they need to live their adventure. Now, here is your host, David Maxwell.
Welcome to the Confident Man Podcast. I'm so glad you joined me here today, and I'm so glad that you want to be a better man. That's what the Confident Man Podcast is about. I also have resources that can help you as a man. If you go to davidmaxwellcoaching.com, click the coaching page. There's all kinds of resources there that can help you grow in many different areas of your life. Now, I'm a big fan of routines. I am. I love having routines. I've got routines in different areas of my life. A lot of good things happen when we have routines. They just are. They go together, habits and routines, especially when you want to do something specific in your life. You want to incorporate some new thing into your life. When you make it a routine, a part of your life, you just do it more. And it can change around, and it can be one of those things that it fits where you are in your life and what you want to do. Like lately, I've changed the time I work out. Working out regularly is something I want to do. And I used to always do it in the morning, but lately I've switched it to where in the morning I do a lot of my writing, a lot of my creating, a lot of my making podcasts, and then I go work out afterwards around the lunchtime. So I'm working out during the lunchtime. I come back and I'm energized for the afternoon, and the afternoon for me is not quite as creative. I work on busy work, things I have to do, and it just seems to be right now a great routine for me. Now, routines are a part of intentional living, and we should embrace them as men. If you want to have a more successful life, if you want to have a more productive life, a more intentional life, you need to bring routines into them. But the problem is routines do have some inherent dangers we need to be careful of. Because what happens is a routine can start to control us. A routine can kind of be our boss. We can ignore other people, other situations, and become obsessed with our own routines. Now, I think we should have routines. They're a big part of us. But what we need to do is take time to review them regularly. Make sure that they're still useful, that they haven't just become a habit that really doesn't help us that much anymore. And as men, we want to be constantly checking if we're living at our best. Am I living the best I can right now? And one of the ways to do that is to check your routines, because sometimes we need to change or we need to adopt new routines based on where we're at or where we want to go. Men who don't change and who don't adapt are men who aren't living their best design. They're just not. Now, humans, we're amazingly adaptable. And that's what's made us so successful. It makes us very powerful. And what we want to do is look at our routines so we don't stop adopting. We don't stop changing based on where we're at. Because we all go through different times of life where we need to change. And routines are something we can use to change where we're at in our life. So we're going to look at routines in different ways and the dangers of routines that we need to be careful of. We need to look at how routines, they can ignore seasons. They really can. We can look at how routines can actually make us lazy and how routines can discourage reflection. first thing we want to talk about is how routines can ignore seasons. Now, everybody has different seasons of life, just like there's seasons to the year. Every year has the 4 seasons. Some places in the country show those seasons more than others. I live in the South, so most of our season is summer. Summer is most of the year for us. We do get a little bit of winter, at least what we consider winter. Other parts of the country laugh at our winters because, when it gets into the 40s here, we're freezing to death. And, people in other parts of the country are wearing shorts and t-shirts in 40-degree weather. But, it is what it is. And just like our year has seasons, life has seasons. And what we want to do is understand the season we're in and the season maybe we're coming out of and moving into. Because when we do that, it helps us to understand what we need to do with our life. And routines can change based on the seasons. Now, sometimes we get so enamored by our routines, we don't change them. But when we move into a new season, we need to change our routines. And as we think about seasons, we need to ask ourselves some key questions to think about, okay, what do I need to do with my routines right now? One of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what season am I currently in? A lot of guys, they get so busy doing stuff, they never think about, okay, where am I right now? And that may sound dumb, but it's important to think it through. Are you single? And right now you're just building your life. You're kind of grinding, you're kind of building the foundation for your life. Well, that's good to know. Are you newly married? Do you have a wife? You're trying to figure out life together with someone else at the house. Are you just starting your family? You've got small children. You've got a baby in the house. Everything has been changed. Well, that's a new season. Or maybe your family's in full swing. School, sports, all that. Or maybe your kids are teenagers now. And that's an even busier time of life. And it's this weird thing because they're getting ready to leave the house and you've got to prepare them. Or have your kids left? Or are they leaving? Well, that's going to be putting you in a new season. Each one of those is a different season in our life. And what we have to understand is those seasons change everything. And one of the things that needs to be changed based on the season is our routines. You want to change your routine to fit the season you're in. If we don't think about the season we're in, then we won't be able to look at our routines through the proper lens. We won't be able to see, does this routine still fit right now? Like if you've just moved from the newly married category to the starting a family, you know that, hey, things have changed. Everything is different now. Now that's good. Having kids is great. Have bunches of them. But the same routines you had before children won't fit after you have children. And if you try to make them fit, it's just going to frustrate you in a lot of ways. So the second question you need to ask is, does this routine fit the season of life I'm in right now? To expect to be able to do the exact same thing you did before a new season is going to lead to disappointment. And it's not that you have to just stop everything. What you need to do is figure out, okay, I like this routine, but in this season it doesn't fit. So how can I change what I do to fit the season that I'm in? We have to look at each season from that perspective, and that helps us to look at our routines to say, okay, is this routine going to help me in the season, or is it going to be a problem? And what do I need to do? Like, I'll give an example, working out. I liked working out, and then when I had kids, everything changed. Life is crazy, lives get busy. So what I did is I switched my working out from afternoon to early morning. I started working out before everybody got up. It wasn't my favorite time. It took some time to get used to. Eventually, I learned to like it. It was a quiet time. It was my time. And it just fit the new season in my life better than working out in the afternoon or in the evening because that was time with my family and I didn't want to give that up. So I made the change to my routine to fit the season of life that I'm in. And what happens is we have to understand the routines should be adjusted. It doesn't mean you stop the routine, especially if it's something important to you. But it means you adjust it to fit the season of life you're in. If you hold on to that routine and you ignore the season of life that you're in, it can cause some really strong issues. It can cause problems with expectations, relationship problems. And so those are things we need to think about. Another question we need to ask ourselves is, what new routines do I need to add? You see, new seasons bring new challenges for us as men. And that's good because it pushes us to grow. So as we move into a new season, we need to ask, okay, what routines do I need to add to my life? What are some things that I'm not doing that I need to be doing in this season? Maybe I drop this routine and I pick up a new routine. Like if you have young children, let's say they're in elementary school or they're in preschool, what are you doing to intentionally spend time with them one-on-one? What are you doing to spend time with your children so you build a relationship with them? You need to make that a routine in your life. You need to make that a regular routine or it just won't happen. So you're looking at the season you're in. Okay, I have small children. What's your goal? To have a better relationship with them. So you bring a routine of, how am I going to intentionally spend time with my children? Like for me, when my kids were little, Saturday morning was just a special time for us. We always tried to make Saturday morning a time where we just spent time together. We'd watch cartoons together. We'd eat breakfast together. I would let my wife sleep in and we would have a fun time together. It gave her a break. It gave me time with them. And we had a lot of memories that we made during that time. Another example is the times with your wife. If you have children, what are you doing to intentionally have a relationship with your wife? That needs to become a new routine that you work into life, because you can't just go on a date anytime. You've got children now. Everything has changed. But you want to maintain that intentional connection with your wife, which means you need to come up with some routines so you and your wife spend time together. That's a new routine you need to bring into your life because it's a new season. So we have to understand that if we're not aware of the season we're in, then it's going to make us to where we don't see the routines that may need to change, that we may need to drop, or we may need to add. Your season helps you understand what routines work best in your life right now. The second danger of routines is routines can actually make us lazy. Now, you may think, well, I thought a routine was living intentionally. It is. But sometimes routines that are good, and for getting things done, we love our routines. But one of the problems with them is they cause us to sometimes not think. We get into the routine, so we get into the habit and we switch our brains off. That can be a problem. So what we want to do is not let our routine hurt us by making us lazy. Now, there's a few dangers that come out with that. One is just a lack of focus. Routines can hurt us because we do them so much, our minds can go somewhere else during that routine. Now, if it's something unimportant, that's fine. But what if it was something important? You want to make sure that you stay engaged with what's going on and you don't let the routine win over your mind all the time. Like one time, for example, I was driving somewhere and it was on the same direction of where I go to church. And so in my mind, I was going to church. So I took the road to head to my church and stopped going where I was supposed to be going. What happened? I wasn't thinking. I was just going on routine. And since it was that way, my car just kept going that way. And it took me a couple minutes to go, wait a minute, I'm not going this way. And I had to turn around and I was almost late to where I was going, which wouldn't have been good. That's the danger of routines. We can laugh about stuff like that, but sometimes it can hurt areas of our life when we switch our brain off. People can get hurt, especially when they're doing a job that might be a little dangerous, that becomes so routine that they forget to do important stuff. And we don't want to forget important details in life, in relationships, because we move everything into a routine. Again, routines are good, but the danger is we lose our focus. It can make us lazy where we don't think. We let the routine do the thinking for us. This was something that pilots had to figure out, because pilots would do things so many times that they started making mistakes. So what happened is they came up with checklists. There's a great book called The Checklist Manifesto that can help you learn about that. But they created checklists for pilots, and they've done it for doctors. They've done it for all these people, because checklists help you do your thinking. They keep you focused. And you may say, well, it's so routine, I know what to do. Well, you may, but sometimes when you know what to do, you forget to do the little things. And if you have a job that is life-threatening, if you have a job that could hurt a lot of people, you want to make sure you do the right thing. So what these guys do is they make checklists so the routine doesn't become so routine where they stop thinking. Now, our lack of focus can sometimes cause us to miss the human element too. When you're in your routine, sometimes you get so focused on it, you forget that there's other people around. You may be at work and there's people who need your input. They need your energy, but you're in the midst of doing something that's routine, so you just blow right by them. And that can happen in your house, with your wife, with your children. You can forget the human element and forget that a lot of good things can come out of interruptions and distractions. In fact, if you look, when Jesus taught on the earth, a lot of his best miracles came out of interruptions, came out of distractions. So what we want to do is not let our routine keep us from noticing the human element and the people around us. Another thing that happens with our routines is we get into a lack of control. Routines can help drive us. They can give us good habits, and those are good things. But what we have to be careful of is that the routine controls us instead of us controlling the routine. The lack of control happens in a lot of ways in men's life. It gets down to the question of who's the boss. You see, routines are meant to serve us. They're meant to do what we tell them to do. They're meant to serve us and what our goal is. We're not meant to serve the routine. Do you do it? Yes. Does it help challenge you to maybe do something you don't feel like doing? Yes, and that's a positive of it. But the thing with a routine is you're the boss of it, which means sometimes you may need to adjust it. Sometimes you may need to change how you do it. Like if you have a routine of working out, but you have that one day that you're just not feeling strong, you're not feeling good. Well, you may say, okay, what's the bare minimum I'm going to do today? I'm just not feeling a workout today. That's an important thing to understand. You could push through it, but sometimes that's not the best thing for you. We have to remember that we're the boss of our routines. There are times when the routine pushes us like a coach, and that's great. But there are times when the routine wants to act like a dictator, and we can't let it do that. I do triathlons, and one of the things I've read as I've studied about training for triathlons is a lot of athletes talk about just those days you're just not feeling it. You have a routine of working out. You work out, 5-6 days a week. And then one of those days you may just be like, I'm just not feeling a long bike ride today. So maybe I do a short bike ride. Maybe I do something else. And what they'd say is that's your body telling you not to train that hard that day. So it is part of your routine, but you need to understand that your routine is there to serve you. You don't serve your routine. Now, life always has ups and downs, and routines help us work within them. But we've got to remember that a routine is a tool. It's a tool that you use. It doesn't control you. You control it. Now, the other routine that hurts us is legacy routines. And that can happen in our lives, in our family, where we work. And that's the old saying, hey, we've always done it this way. Have you ever heard that? Well, we've always done it that way. Well, sometimes that can be a bad thing. It can be a downfall of business, of families, of all kinds of things. In fact, it's funny, if you've read history, Kodak, who's not around anymore, actually invented digital technology for taking pictures, but they never used it. They didn't think it was important. And that digital technology ended up running them out of business because they were stuck in film. We're going to do it this way. This is the way we've always done it. And you want to be careful that you don't have routines in your life that act like that keep you that way. Maybe your family does it that way. Your family has that. We've always done it this way before. We've always gone on vacation this way before. Well, maybe it's time to change that. Maybe it's time to see, okay, what season are we in? Maybe that's not the best thing. Or maybe other family is kind of guilting you. Well, we've always done our vacations all together, but maybe for your family right now, that's just not the best thing. There are legacy routines that happen in our life that we need to really not be afraid to evaluate and say, okay, is this the best thing? You see, Kodak forgot that they were in the picture business. They thought they were in the film business. And because of that, they held on to a routine that actually ran them out of business. And what we have to do as men is we've got to stay focused and we've got to stay motivated on the reason behind the routine. Why do I want this routine? Why is this routine important? What is it about this routine, maybe from the family? What is it about it that we all wanted to do? That's the motivation. The routine itself is not something you hold on to sometimes. It's the motivation behind the routine. So what you want to do is make sure that you're always thinking and you don't just let the routine control your thoughts. The third danger of routines is routines can discourage reflection. Now, as I've said, routines are a big part of life. They can bring a lot of good elements of them. But one of the big issues with routines is how they become so second nature, we don't think. And we just talked about that. But what happens is sometimes we get into routines so much as men that we stop reflecting. We stop thinking about the big questions of our life. And when I say reflection, I don't mean you sit in a circle and stare at your belly button with a candle going and chant or anything weird like that. I'm talking about reflecting on your life, reflecting on your purpose, reflecting on why you're here as a man. See, a lot of guys get so busy doing, so busy getting into the routine, doing the schedule, getting things done. And that's good, but we still need to reflect. Men were made to reflect. Men were made to have a purpose and a passion in their life. And we don't want the routine to get in the way of that. You see, routines can get us to where we kind of go on autopilot. We're just doing things because it's the way we've always done them. And everything becomes a routine, and we just start doing stuff without thinking. I think of one of my favorite scenes from the original Jurassic Park movie where Ian Malcolm, the professor, says, yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. I think that question is something we need to have in our mind. We can do a lot of things, but should we do them? And if we never reflect as men, if we get so much into the routine, we'll just start doing, and we never take time to sit back and say, okay, do I need to be doing this? Do I need to be doing it? Is this part of my life? Is this part of my calling? Men need to reflect on their life. They need to take the time to ask themselves why. Why am I doing this? And some of the things we need to reflect on and kind of break up that routine. One is our purpose. Every man needs a purpose. You see, your purpose as a man is not just to pay bills. It's not just to make it to the weekend, to make it to, your vacation. You need to reflect on your purpose and think about, why am I here? A lot of men never do this because they're busy. The routines of busyness can rob us of that time to think. We got to get stuff done. And we do. Men work, it's what we do. But it doesn't mean we don't take time to think. Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I saying yes to another responsibility? Why am I not saying no to some other responsibilities? You see, we have to look at our purpose. Men, a lot of times, live with a lot of insecurity because they're busy, they're doing stuff, but inside they're wondering, is this all there is? Isn't there more to life than just making money? Is there more to life than just going to work every day? Is there more to life than just paying bills, mowing my grass, and taking the trash out? We have to, as men, find our purpose. There are a lot of men out there living with no purpose. And what happens to those guys is they become very hedonistic. They become very selfish. And that's not what you want to be as a man, because that's not living your best life. So we have to take the time to kind of break out of our routine to think about, what's my purpose? The other thing we want to think about is our direction. Where are we going as men? What direction are we going with our life? And I talk to men all the time about living their ultimate adventure. And what I mean by that is not just to break free of restraint and go do whatever you want selfishly around the world. What I mean is that you're living your design as a man to the best of your ability where you're at. You see, every man has a design. Every man has a direction he needs to go. And he needs to put everything into that. And if you don't reflect, if you just get into the busyness of the routine, you don't know where you're going. A lot of guys never think about, where do I want to be 20 years from now? What do I want life to look like 20 years from now. And so what they do is they put their head down and they get busy, they get in their routines, and they live kind of just running blind. It's like running through fog. That fog of busyness can rob you from years of your life. But when you know your direction, it helps you set priorities. What's the most important thing? Because the last thing we want to do is climb the ladder, get to the top, and figure out we've been going up the wrong wall. So you want to figure out, what direction am I going? You also want to look at your relationships. You don't want the routine to stop you from thinking about, what important relationships do I have in my life? How am I spending time with the people who are most important to me? What am I doing to regularly invest in these relationships? You see, routines can hurt us because we're so busy doing the routine, we don't think about the people that we have a relationship with in the midst of those routines. We don't spend time with them because we're so focused on our routine. But if we don't think about our relationships, they just won't get thought about. And those relationships are very important to us because we need people in our life. Because every one of us can sometimes just get a little weird. We start thinking weird things, or we start getting depressed or having these issues, and having other people in our life is important because they can help bring us out. They can wake us up. They can speak truth to us. One of the other things we want to also reflect on is our growth as men. We don't grow unless we mean to. And sometimes we get into routines where we're busy doing stuff and we're not growing. We don't accidentally improve ourselves. We have to intentionally improve ourselves, which means we've got to grow. And reflection helps us as men to look at ourselves, to look in the mirror and say, okay, what do I need to change? What areas do I need to develop? How can I grow as a man? And so what you want to do is take time to not just get stuck in a routine, but you want to break away from that routine and say, okay, how am I growing? And maybe what things need to change in my life? What are some things I'm doing that I don't need to be doing anymore? Your growth is something that you have to take responsibility for as a man. No one can do it for you. Today, reflection is a lost art. A lot of men don't know how to do it. So I want to challenge you to break your routine, to sometimes do something purposefully to reflect on your life, to think about, what is my purpose? Where am I going? Who are the important relationships? How am I growing? Think of those things, and I promise you, your life will be richer and you'll be a better man, and you'll probably come up with better routines. All right, gentlemen, closing out the show today, we've got to understand that men should have routines. Intentional men have routines in their life. You should have routines. You should have things you do regularly, especially when they're tied to important aspects of your life. The thing to remember, though, is that routines are there to serve us. We don't serve our routines. They serve us. We've got to keep in mind, what's the purpose of this routine? And then decide kind of what it will be, how it will be used. We got to make sure our routines reflect the season of life that we're in. We all go through different seasons. It changes. Every 5-10 years, you're in a new season of life. Your routines should adjust and change with you, because we don't want our routines to cause us to lose focus. We want to make sure our mind stays engaged in our life. We don't let the routine kind of rule everything that we do. And the routine should not get in the way of us living on purpose. The routine should help you live on purpose and not take away from you living on purpose. Powerful men have routines in their life. They just do. You look at successful men, most of them have a routine. Now, it may not be a routine that fits you, and that's cool because your call is different from theirs. But powerful men have routines in their life, but also powerful men will change their routines when they need to. They're not afraid to stop doing things and add something else. It's funny, if you follow someone who maybe is a powerful person, CEO, things like that, one year they'll be talking about, I'm doing this, this, and this. And then the next year you hear them speak somewhere else and they're talking totally different. I'm doing this, this, and this. Why? Because they figured out the routines are good, but routines can always be changed. The routine doesn't control them, they control their routine. The more you make routines work for you, the more powerful man you will become.
You've been listening to the Confident Man Podcast. Click subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can connect with David on Facebook and Instagram at David the Maxwell. Find resources to help you as a man at theconfidentman.me. That's theconfidentman.me.